first campaign I ever played, our cleric decided to become privatized.
Oh, wow.
So if we wanted to be healed, we had to pay for it.
But when the enemy isn't capitalism, the enemy is still capitalism. Let's be real.
My favorite enemy is
My favorite enemy is private healthcare.
We're rolling dice. Camera.
Action.
Hello and welcome to the BBEG Podcast, which this week stands for Big Bad Evil Guest. Today we have got friend of the podcast, Killian, in. Hatty has been taken ill, so we have called in backup. This is Killian, M's friend from a ship contract that he did. Killian, explain yourself.
Yeah.
How did you get here? Why are you in my house?
That ship contract. It was 3 weeks, wasn't it? Killian joined the Rock Guest Act group that, we do, the week of my birthday, and this is how we got chatting, because Richard in that group was like, oh, have you done anything for your birthday before coming out? And I just started to talk about all the D&D stuff that Kelly had bought me for my birthday, and instantly Killian was like, you do D&D? And basically it went from there, and on not that ship, but we did 3 ships back to back. The week after, we had 4 sea days, so we did 2 one-shots during that cruise.
Had to fill that time. Absolutely.
It was great. We took it into DM in.
I was about to say, how did you decide out of the group? How did you decide who DM
We couldn't. So both me and them were like, "Oh, I don't mind. Like, you can do it. Oh no, you can do it." And then we were like, "Well, why don't we just do 2?"
So we had 4 sea days in 1 week.
4 sea days in 1 week. I mean, you got to fill that time.
In 1 week.
It was
so long.
It was a long week.
2 of the boys had never played, and they really wanted to. So we're like, "Okay, sure, this is what we're doing." But yeah,
are you a DM or are you a player?
I started as a player. My way into D&D was actually a fairly lame one, but it's my story anyway. So we're gonna. It started actually. I was doing research for a part. I'm an actor, and I was doing research for a part. I was working on the immersive secret cinema Stranger Things show.
That's fucking awesome.
I got cast in the part of Mike, and I was a big Stranger Things fan, and I played like a tiny little bit of D&D when I was younger, but like simplified version, sort of like Kids on Bikes type.
You haven't heard about the when I first got into D&D, we played Flipcoin D&D because we didn't have the dice and didn't know about the apps.
But that works too. It's just success or fail, and that works as well. That's brilliant. So that's sort of how I got into it. Someone in the cast was a DM and had played a lot of D&D, was quite a bit older than me. And we got to sort of talking, and there was a few of us that had to play D&D in the show.
Makes sense, yeah.
With audience members and stuff, so we had to learn the mechanics of it, or at least the simple version
to understand what you're saying.
Exactly.
That's like whenever I watch like things like Grey's Anatomy and they're using all these terms, like, do you actually know what it means? Have you researched this?
No, exactly.
But you know what? I'd rather research D&D than hyperglycemic. That's the first word that came to mind.
It was absolutely a lot more fun than hypoglycemia. I will say that for sure. But no, we sort of, it was a bunch of us, six people, I believe we were, 6 people. We all started to learn, and we had this like session that was meant to just be a one shot.
Yep.
And it actually just kept going and going. This campaign isn't actually done. Actually, it still goes on. We haven't played in about 2 years now.
Oh, bloody hell!
But that campaign's been going on for about 5 years, I think, something like that. So it's been a while. So I did a lot of research. They taught us sort of the basic rules, you might say, and then I ended up having to play D&D every night on that show with audience members, sort of teaching them a very quick version of, okay, so here you're rolling to see if you hit.
Yeah.
And then here you're rolling to see if you do damage. That's sort of that simple. We'd run like a very simple one encounter combat thing.
Yeah.
And we'd sort of interweave that with scenes that were scripted, that were sort of from the show.
Fully immersive.
fully immersive.
If you don't mind me asking, how many audience members were there to teach?
We had 1,300 a night.
Bloody hell.
In the show that we could fit in the room. You maybe were able to have about 50 people at a time. So a night that we got to teach people probably about 150, because we could do it about two to three times a night.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be Stranger Things fans that have no idea how deep the actual and you know, it's an immersive show. You get all sorts of audience members, sort of drunk bachelorette party girls who aren't here for this. They're just here to see Steve Harrington and Billy. You know, they're not really interested in the D&D, but they're like, oh, we recognize this character, and then they'd call my character, you know. They wouldn't call him Mike. They'd be like, "Oh my God, look, it's Will." And then I never really stopped. I sort of decided that I wanted to be a DM because I saw my friend doing it, and it looked like a hell of a lot of fun. And it didn't look as hard when he was doing it. So
a hell of a lot of work.
What are we talking
in
about?
that campaign? Was that when you played your first class then?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was given the simple choice of the player's handbook and the DM's guide, and sort of being like, what do you want to play? We're going to do this one session. Like, what do you fancy playing? My Lord of the Rings brain went Ranger straight away, which is how I ended up playing the Ranger as my first class. But you know what? I wasn't too interested in any of the races.
Really?
At first. I was reading through it and I was like, yeah, I I could do an elf ranger, but that feels a little bit like
too on the nose.
Yeah, too on the nose. Human as well. Like, I don't want to play Aragorn himself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. But I do want to play Aragorn, but I don't want it to be like Aragorn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to feel like I'm Aragorn. So I sort of asked, well, is there anything else? And then my DM at the time showed me sort of a list of all of the races that you were able to get. And I settled on a Tabaxi Ranger.
Your first class was the Ranger, and that is what we are discussing today. Isn't that lucky?
Yeah.
Isn't that lucky?
What are the chances?
Almost like we planned this. Almost.
So, like, if we're to summarize what a Ranger is, like, I kind of say they're probably the most versatile class out of all the classes, because they're a mix or like a hybrid of almost 3 different types of classes. They've got the druid and like a fighter, because
I would say fighter.
druid spellcasting with their magic, even though their magic is limited in comparison. But
I'd say also some of the archetypes sort of lean into druid, like other than the spellcasting, like the Drake Ward and stuff like that. We'll talk about.
Yeah,
but
and it's all like animal based, and exactly. They can be great in the sort of rogue skill sets of like stealth and survival and all that sort of thing, but also with the combat styles that they can pick from, like a fighter. So you've got 3 different archetypes that just mold into one. Yeah,
I believe it's also pretty much the only. I mean, I guess you could have an archer fighter, but it's probably the most reliable, other than the rogue, long range weapons-based fighter.
Yeah. And you're right. You have the flexibility to fully make your ranger a ranger can still be combat focused, even if they're just shooting arrows from the back, but as in up close and personal, they have the functionality depending on what fighting style you choose and how you decide to build your ranger.
Like the archetypes, they're almost made for close combat. Some of these. I've just gotten through the PHB as the beginner of the group. I'm going to be learning as we go through the series. But yeah, it seems like the archetypes really cater themselves to close combat for these. So maybe.
Yeah, I mean, other than possibly the hunter, I would say the hunter is the one where you sort of can pick archery, which was actually the way I went at the time. I was really, really excited about
Lord of the Rings.
I was really excited about Lord of the Rings. Look, I've always been a fan of Aragorn, but like Legolas pinging arrows from the back is always like really cool. It's like having a fantasy sniper.
So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, if we just break down to what actually is a ranger, because in the PHB it literally says that you are a hunter, and maybe there is this cross between wanting to be a solo person and being part of a culture almost like a druid. But then when it goes to actually building the basic ranger, the PHB basically feeds you a backstory, and that is what it goes for.
It does actually, yeah.
So in a little bit, we're going to discuss the favored enemy, and because maybe, and it says here where the source of your hatred for that kind of enemy comes from, and it's like, did the source of the particular hatred from some kind of enemy? Did a monster kill someone you love or destroy your home village? Did you see too much destruction from these monsters and commit yourself to doing it? I'm like, it's kind of railroading you down the, hey, think about this just for your backstory in the PHB. Do you agree?
No, I agree. But I think in my opinion, the PHB has quite a lot of that. Anyway, for any class, anything, I don't really like. I always take these more as a suggestion. Anyway,
it's a guide. It's not set. It's just like, especially if you are playing for the first time and you don't really know how to comprehend it, because there are some words in that book that I read and I'm like, huh. So when you see examples like that, it's so easy to take it in and go, okay, so that's what it means. I don't have to do it necessarily that way, but it's a great example of how to.
Yeah, but I think it's a better way to have that in the book because, and specifically for new players, people who haven't played before don't know exactly how much freedom you can have in D&D. Actually having more boundaries is better. And you see that as a DM as well. If you turn to brand new characters and go, what do you guys want to do? And you give them no guidance whatsoever as to what like the quest might be or anything, they're going to go off and do something, but it won't be fun because it won't be something that you've necessarily prepared for. And it won't be something that they know they're going to be good at, like things like that. They need to learn what they're good at, what they like as well. Some players are going to be a lot more sort of combat oriented. Some players are going to be a lot more RP oriented, and you need to learn what your players like and what your players sort of enjoy playing. And I think that's the beauty of having this is for a new player that's already got a lot of freedom whenever they're picking this class. You know, when you're having to pick your skills and things for the first time, attributes, beats, all of those things, it's a lot. It's a lot of information. Even at level 1, clicking all of those things, you're like, am I making a terrible mistake here?
I still think that.
Yeah, you're playing a video game. I remake my characters like 15 times. I don't know if you guys have played Baldur's Gate, but I've made more characters and I still haven't finished the game. And I've got
done Act 1 5 times. I've done the whole game once and Act 1 5 times.
Exactly. Just because you want to try out different classes and you want to try out different things. And I think having those guidelines and this sort of like railroad for the first few times anyway is really helpful for you to go, cool, I know what I'm doing. I know what my character is like. Especially, I've got a tendency to play with actors, but I've also played with people who aren't actors and they're not necessarily as comfortable with RP and coming up with their own stories and backstories, and having one almost pre-made that they can put their own little twist on.
They try to put names in.
Okay? Exactly. Pop names in, change a little thing here and there. And sometimes they'll come up to you with like a really cool detail and just be like, hey, like, can I do this? And you're like, yes,
you're getting it.
That's how this works. That's how this works.
Yes.
Like, please keep coming to see me and ask whether you can first. But most of the time, yes.
If we're talking about creating a ranger, and let's look at what the PHB does tell us and how it guides us, but also what other things we might suggest ourselves. So like the PHB, if you're creating a ranger, it typically does tell you to make your highest stat in dexterity, which makes sense considering most of your weapons are going to be from dexterity. However, there are things that do say you can put it in strength. I guess that depends on how you plan on building your ranger, especially if you want more up close combat and not like
so the PHB
not as range heavy.
Says in strength and dexterity saving throws, that's where you're going to be most likely to use. But then wisdom as well, if you want to go fully down this magic route and magic using ranger, it says wisdom is your modifier.
So it is.
like balancing where you want to do your combat.
And it is
magic,
important
what
because
you
you need all of that. I mean, Hunter's Mark you can
Yeah.
cast even with sort of low wisdom because it doesn't require a check. You can just sort of do
It's
it.
concentration, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just concentration. So actually, depending on what you do, if you want to be a bit more sort of polyvalent and have sort of a hand in every pot, you put your highest in dexterity still.
Yeah.
Because if you favor wisdom first, the issue is there aren't as many spell slots and spell choices for ranger as there are for a druid. Even for an artificer, I believe artificers get more. They get pretty much the same amount of spell slots, I think, but not the same amount of spells. They get more choices in spells, and they get ritual spells as well.
Yeah, dexterity and wisdom would be my top two. Dex first, then
that's what I do. But then again, it could be really interesting because the wisdom comes into play for the spellcasting, but I actually, on a role-playing aspect, when you're making a ranger, I always love, at first I used to be very much a metagamer, being like, how much damage can I output in one round of combat?
We discussed this in one of the other episodes, like, do I pick the cool spells that do the most damage?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm sort of straying away from that now that I've played sort of the higher damage classes, and it's like, it's fun to do 60 points of damage in one turn with one arrow. It's lovely and it's great fun. And when you're killing something huge with that and you're sort of like the main damage output, you're very thankful that you're there. But as I'm sort of growing and evolving in my D&D journey, it's sort of been, well, how do I get around that? Like, how do I find a clever way to get around this sort of magical, dangerous world? And I've always sort of played in my head with this idea of having a ranger that's very focused on wisdom, but not necessarily for the spellcasting, which it'd still be a thing, but for the skills themselves, you'd have a lot higher nature, you'd have a lot higher insight, I believe. Insight wisdom.
Yeah, insight wisdom.
You'd have a lot higher, very important skills, and like you could have very much like a sort of camper van dad, middle-aged man that's a druid because he's just like he used to be in the scouts and he used to like craft a lot of things, and actually his thing isn't necessarily fighting. He's just really good in nature, and he's very clever about the way he goes about it. He's like, I can make a camp here. We can make a fire for sure. That'd be fun. Would he be as good in combat? No. Would he be hella fun to play? Yes.
But then also with combat, it totally depends how you build it. Typically, you got the dex, but if you do the flip side and want to focus on upfront personal combat and decide to put it in your strength, me personally, it's not a route I would go down. I like the dex for the ranger. However, it just doesn't. It's not achievable, and it just changes the aspect of how you're going to play your ranger.
Yeah.
I think it might be worth exploring if you're interested in multi-classing at some point. If you were to multi-class into a fighter at some point, or as maybe a barbarian, maybe. I tend to avoid multi-classing barbarian is very specific and
weird,
so we're not going to go there.
I played a barbarian once for the Christmas one shot we did, and it seemed very one track mind. I hit things hard and that is it. So if I'm going to multi-class, I'd rather choose fighter that has a little bit more diversity than the barbarian. But we discussed how we would play the ranger, but what can they actually do? Let's rattle through what they get on each level. Because
brilliant,
it's kind of like at some points you just get one thing that's really specific, but then at some levels you go in 3 different directions, and it's like, and some of these things in my notes that I made, I've gone, wow, that's specific to the exact session you have to be doing at the exact time what the DM has planned.
Yeah.
So
there is a bit of that.
Literally, we've all discussed favorite enemy, and it's saying why do you hate this enemy? You specialize in tracking them. But then the other thing you get at level 1 is Natural Explorer, where you can choose your favorite terrain and you get advantages. If it's like the woodland, you don't have movement disadvantages when you move across terrain. But all I thought when I read that was, one of them is the Underdark. In the campaign I'm running at the minute while M's away, I don't have an Underdark bit planned.
No.
That's very specific. So that's
I was actually, when I was reading it, I thought exactly the same, because and I'm assuming when they say Underdark, it could mean sort of anything underground, but you could sort of like widen it to that. But when I read it, it sort of read as Underdark, as in the dungeon that is set under the city of Waterdeep, called the Underdark, which has like a whole book about it. It is a whole campaign. It's a sequel, the Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
Yeah, no, that's what I've heard of. I'm not
exactly, and that would be extremely specific, because it would be extremely helpful for that one campaign, like extremely helpful. But unless you widen that, then that limits you quite a bit. So I think the way to really make that pay off is have that be a discussion with your DM ahead of the first session.
Yeah.
Because, and I tend to do that anyway, whenever someone has to pick a favorite enemy or a favorite terrain or things like that. I like to have my players, especially when I like it when they come to me and they sort of go, hey, what sort of enemies are we likely to encounter? Is there any point me picking dragons as my favorite enemy? Like, are we realistically going to encounter? Because dragons is a very specific kind of enemy. It's not necessarily an enemy that you're going to come across every 5 minutes.
No. They're the special encounters.
Exactly. I mean, I've been running that one campaign. It was Waterdeep Dragon Heist for 2 years, and they fought a dragon in the very last session. But the rest of the time, that would not have been useful at all. At all. So I think it's really useful to sort of come to your DM and be like, please give me some direction. And you could always be like, well, I feel like undead might be a really, really good choice. So if we were to sort of, are we still on the favorite enemy, or did you want to look at Natural Explorer?
I mean, both, because again, I think they're both very specific. Because if you're not going to the Feywilds, why would you pick Fey as a favorite enemy?
Exactly. I agree. So I think it's great to sort of give that list to your DM and be like, can you give me a couple of choices that would be useful? Because I think as a DM,
narrow it down.
Exactly, narrow it down. Be like, if I were you, I wouldn't pick constructs, dragons, and fiends, because we're not going to go into the 9 hells, That's just the way we're going to do it. And straight away, you've got a lot better things to do. So if you know that you're going to have a very sort of forest and nature-based campaign, a lot of sort of exploring through woodlands and things like that, it might be great for you to have plants and beasts. I'd like to pair it for that. Another way you can go about it is go about your character, follow what the PHP tells you, and sort of go, well, actually, I really, really bloody hate dragons because a dragon killed my father. Therefore, dragon has to be one of them.
Yeah, but then that's up to the DM to go, I'm going to incorporate your backstory. Now I've got to squeeze a fucking dragon in here somewhere.
Yeah, but if you set it up right and it lands, it'll really land, because it'll be personal about the character, and they'll be like, for this whole time that I haven't used this one feat that I have that was just in my character sheet for 2.5 years. Exactly. That first round of combat, when they hit that hunter's mark and they go, I was born for this,
I guess you want to look at it like, do you want something that's going to happen often and then probably blitz your way through most combats, or do you want something that's just going to have an impact on those bigger fights that probably make it a bit more interesting for you as a player, in my opinion?
When you get favored enemy, for example, at level 1, you get to pick another one at level 6. Not change, you get an additional one, which is brilliant. So I would always say, talk to your DM first. I love picking undead. There's always going to be undead somewhere. There's undead somewhere. I think humanoids is really solid. Humans are always pricks, so pick humans. You're always going to be fighting some humans. So I would, and I like to pick beasts. I think mine ended up being beasts.
I think as well, if you get to pick another one at level 6, then if you have your personal backstory at level 1, maybe you picked up a big bad in this thing. You go,
100%.
Now is this guy. This guy is now an additional target. What am I looking at here?
Absolutely. You've come across more enemies, and this one person has killed someone in your party. Straight away, you've got a vendetta.
There you go.
And that story-wise, that's very interesting. And that's going to come in handy, because now the quest is, well, let's get revenge on this fucker.
And hopefully by level 6, you've met them 2 or 3 times. They've kind of popped up and you go, actually, I'm going to be seeing this person more and more. There wasn't a one-off.
Cool. Exactly. And then that there's the payoff.
Yes.
It's the payoff that we're looking for here. Yeah.
Now, as you said earlier, the fact that they're kind of specific with these features, Tasha's Cauldron brought in some optional features that you can swap them out for. So, favored enemy could be swapped out for favored foe. Am I right? Is that Tasha's Cauldron? The features definitely exist. I might have said the wrong book.
Yeah, Tasha's Cauldron. No, it's Tasha's Cauldron.
Featured favored enemy becomes favored foe. And basically, Killian mentioned Hunter's Mark, which is a spell. And basically, what that spell does is you place a mark on a creature and you get an additional 1d6, 1d8 damage on every attack that you then do for like the next minute until that creature dies.
No.
Favored foe is basically a slightly watered down version of Hunter's Mark, and it allows you to use it as a feature. Place a mark on them for 1d4. So you're not picking a type of enemy that you have some advantages against for the rest of your life. Just in that moment, you get to place a mark on one individual creature and basically chip off extra health points. And then as soon as they're dead, you can bounce that mark onto someone else. And then, to replace Natural Explorer, you have Deft Explorer, which basically, instead of you picking a terrain, it just allows you to gain the benefits from the canny, the roving, and the tireless features, which basically it's you double your proficiency on one of your skills, you increase your walking speed, and you get to gain temporary hit points. So now with the additional content, I
think that's brilliant.
So if you don't think that fits you, you can pick something else to swap it out for.
Okay, that sounds more beneficial than the Natural Explorer that they've got
described.
Here. Yeah,
it's less tunnel vision. I think Natural Explorer is that's the reason I was talking about favorite enemy and Natural Explorer at the same time, is I think they're both extremely similar in the way of like, it's going to be sometimes really, really useful, and sometimes it's just going to sit on your character sheet.
Woodlands, Myconids, there you go, done. Combine them into 2.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, it's that. Whereas actually Deft Explorer, it would be something I'd be a lot more interested in, because one, making your character more mobile, specifically for a character like this, where you're going to be wanting as much movement as possible, because you're so versatile. You might need to be on the back line. You might need to be on the front line. You might need to be healing someone the next second. You want to be able to move as quickly as possible. So I think that's probably a better choice in the sense that it'll come in handy in a lot more situations.
Yeah.
Level 2 is basically, what do you want to do? And here's some spells.
Yeah, you pick up your fighting style at level 2, which is lovely. I think that's very similar to a fighter class and things like that. You're going to be sort of picking, again, that's sort of split between the Player's Handbook and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. There's a couple more options that added through that book. But you've got your main ones being archery, defense, dueling, and 2-weapon fighting. That's personal preference.
Yeah.
It's genuinely, what do you fancy playing? And what are you going to be the best at? It doesn't mean you can't do the other ones. It just means you're going to be better at that.
Yeah, but then part of that with spell casting, because you get that at level 2 as well. If you want to be long range, you choose archery and then cater your spells to that. If you want to be close up, you choose 2-weapon fighting and cater your spells to that. If you want to do defense and then play the healer, cater it to that. Level 2 is where you can basically, which avenue would you like to travel down?
Big choices, important choices. But again, I believe you get another fighting style at a higher level at some point. I think you get another choice.
I know you definitely do with fighters. I don't know if you do with rangers.
No, I wouldn't be surprised, because there's some ranger things that actually cross over into completely different classes. Like, I know we're going to get to it at level 15. You basically get the rogues. You can hide, dash, disengage, bonus action. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some crossover with fighter in this.
Yeah, there could be. I mean, you could always pick a feat and get some more fighting style.
There is that.
Instead of taking an ability score improvement, you can always take a feature, which I always love. I find it infinitely more fun than ability score.
Oh, that's the campaign I'm playing at the minute with M's friend Tyler and invited me to play. I was like, I'd rather can you just send me a list of feats, because that's more than I put one in my dexterity and one in my strength. It's so much more interesting, and that's where you can make your ranger who they are with with level 2 and a good feat.
But for spellcasting, did you want to sort of talk about the kind of spells that they get? Because that will cover pretty much everything, like all of the levels above. I think obviously the main one, the famous one, is Hunter's Mark, which we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Which I did a little check, by the way, stacks with Favored Foe.
The Rangers spells list are more dedicated to, I'm going to say, like the backup approach. They do get the odd spell that are handy for combat. Is it Arrow Volley or something like that?
It's an obviously volley, I think.
Volley, there you go. And that works as like a bonus action as well. But most of the spells are either Hunter's Mark, or you get some healing opportunities in there, which is great for the party, especially if you don't have a healer. Now, I don't think a ranger should be the sole healer of your group because their spell slots are limited in comparison, but it's still handy. It is still handy, and you can't...
It will save you from having one of your PCs getting killed in the middle of a random fight. You know, PCs are stupid. They will drop to 0 HP and fail death saving throws. You know, especially when you're mean like me and you don't let people roll their own death saving throws.
And you might have a selfish player at the table playing like cleric or a paladin who goes, actually, I want to do something cool. I'll heal you later. And it's like, well, later is too late.
Later is too late.
So it's nice to have the option to be able to go, I can do this myself.
Oh, yeah. I found that out the hard way. I was essentially the ranger. The only one really, cleric had been down. Cleric?
Yeah.
Yeah, a cleric had been downed, and she... it didn't go very well for her. We were all like, she'll be fine. She'll be fine. And she was rolling death saving throws, and none of us had ever had a PC death. It was our first campaign. We didn't really know how it worked. And it got to the third. She got killed by a giant hammerhead shark. Obviously. In an underwater dungeon. Yeah.
First campaign I ever played, our cleric decided to become privatized.
Oh, wow.
So if we wanted to be healed, we had to pay for it.
Listen, in D&D, the enemy, it's not always, but when the enemy isn't capitalism, the enemy is still capitalism. Let's be real.
Yeah.
My favorite enemy is
my favorite enemy is private healthcare.
I think that's kind of the bulk of the spell casting. It's buffs, it is some additional damage and some healing functions.
Yeah, some controlling things, you know, fog cloud, stuff like that, which can be really useful when fighting stuff like wizards and things like that require line of
sight.
Brilliant.
Animal-based stuff. It mirrors the druid, just not as full as the druid. The sort of next main feature you get is primeval awareness. And again, it comes with an option that you can swap it out for primal awareness. So the differences between the two. Primeval awareness, you can use an action to use up a spell slot and raise awareness of your surroundings for about a minute, and you are aware of creatures around you for up to 1 mile. If it is your favored terrain, if you've picked that feature, it can be up to 6 miles. Whereas primal awareness, it replaces that. That feature allows you to learn some extra ranger spells that doesn't count against the number of spells you know. Personally, that's the one I would pick.
Yeah, because I think the primeval awareness, I'm like, again, I wrote down once 1 or 6 miles. It's either a guess or you're heavily hinted at already who's in the vicinity. So if I want to look for this kind of enemy, it's either, already you're in the woodlands. Yes, I keep saying Mike in it. Or you just have to take a shot in the dark and go, is this person here? And they go, no, you've wasted an action.
No, absolutely. But then again, I think it all depends on how you want to play it, because I fully understand why you'd pick primal instead of primeval awareness, but I think I'd go the other way.
I love magic.
You do love magic. You do love a bit of magic. You're a very magic boy. I think for me the issue with the ranger and focusing so much on spells is the amount of spell slots. Now, with primal awareness, you can cast each of those spells once a day without expending a spell slot, and then you start using up your spell slots. But you only get a spell at 3rd, 5th, 9th, 13th, and 17th level. So
Yeah.
even if you were to be level 20 as free spells that you could cast once each, you'd only have 5 choices. And then you're using spell slots. That's
Yeah.
not a lot.
No.
Especially when at level 8, I believe you've got like 7-8 spell slots in total.
But still, with primeval awareness, you still have to use up a spell slot to use that feature.
True.
So when you look at it that way,
True.
you're burning spell slots either way. And again, like to what Will was just saying, I think it can be scenario dependent. If you are trying to, let's say you're escaping, let's say it's a prison or whatever, and you got guards around you, that feature would be really handy just to sense what is around you so you know how to stay away from it. If you to think of it that in that sort of situation, because you don't get told exactly what it is or how many there are. You just know something's to the left.
No. This feature doesn't reveal the creature's location or number, so you know that's in the vicinity. It's like you don't. It's like, okay, they're here.
That's true.
I think going,
and that is weaker than the druid actually, because the druid has a way to find out exactly where the creature would be. But then again, that's just tapping into that versatility where like the ranger doesn't do as much damage as a rogue would do, for example, with sneak attack and things like that, but still high damage. They don't get as much spell casting as the druid, but they still get some of it. You know what I mean? And then they don't get as much fighting options as the fighter, but they still get some of it. And they get a little bit of all 3, but they're just master of none,
but
you know?
On the back of that, so at level 4, of course, you get to pick your feat or ability score improvements, but level 5, you get, like a fighter, you get an extra attack. So there's your next little crossover.
And think of just obviously I'm just going scenario based in my head. If you've been up front for one enemy in that moment and you have knocked them down and you no longer have to deal with them, you have a quick chance to pull out your bow and fire it at someone else. Do you get what I mean? Like it actually becomes quite handy. And even a fighter can do that if they have a bow, but the ranger who might specialize in that, well, it's just so much more an advantage in that situation.
But at level 8, you get Land's Stride, where you moving through non-magical difficult terrain costs you no extra movement. You can also pass through non-magical plants without being slowed by them and without taking damage from them if they have hazards. Not gonna lie, I thought advantage against magical plants, and then you don't take damage from non-magical plants. I've never seen this implemented. I've never seen you walk through the brush and go, can you take 2d4s worth of thorns?
No, I think it's useful for I think difficult terrain costs you no extra movement is probably the most useful part.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, definitely.
But that depends if your DM implements a lot of difficult terrain. You know, I've seen DMs that never use it. But then again, I think as a DM, it's important for you to sort of look at your players' abilities and things like that and be like, right, I need to throw some stuff at them that they're good at, as well as stuff that they're not good at.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to.
I want them to use all their character aspects as much as possible.
So if they're that, like, maybe have like a sinking ship, turn that into like a difficult terrain because the ship is like this. It's really hard to go across. But the ranger, because of their dexterity and just the fact that they can climb like a motherfucker,
100%,
will be able to just go through that.
Yeah. And to add on to your thing about you've never seen it implemented, it also comes from the fact that you would need a character for something like the magical damage in it not taking effect. Look at a spell like Entangle or Spike Growth, where it turns the terrain
area effect.
It stops you from taking damage, but you've got to wait for that scenario to happen.
I think they could have pushed it a little bit further without breaking the game, though. I think you could have included stuff like web and things like that that come from non-plant origins that still sort of impede movement. I don't think it.
No, I agree with that.
Considering the whole point of a ranger, literally at level 1, is freedom of movement, essentially.
Exactly.
Just make it all area of effect. You have advantages. I hard agree.
It depends. There's like a slight difference between turning something into difficult terrain and something that impedes movement completely.
There's a grey area.
Yeah, there's a grey area. Because like, does web just turn it into difficult terrain when you're going through it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now, next up is hide in plain sight in it, which goes to the more roguier territory where you can spend a minute creating camouflage for yourself. Basically, it gives you a +10 to your stealth checks The only con to it is you have to stay still. You can't move. Is basically hiding yourself where you are, which is handy if you're just trying to let someone walk past you so you can escape.
But then my whole thing of it is it doesn't give you advantage, going back to you have to stay still, it doesn't give you advantage in getting to the place. You have to get into the place, stand still, and then get out of the place with no...
I think you have to like really preempt the situations where this is going to be useful. You know, if you were like conducting an assassination or something, that might be really useful.
Yeah.
You might have placed yourselves there like days before and waiting for your target. No, but genuinely, like, and that's where the crossover with the rogue will come in, where you're just like, well, actually, this is just perfect because the rogue could just stay hidden there for ages.
But then, so I can't remember the name of the spell, but Jordan used it with his ranger. Pass that trace spell slot into hide in plain sight, then keep going. That's a way to get around it, but that means
oh my goodness,
that
stacks as well, doesn't it?
The plus fucking 20.
Yeah.
Plus 20.
It's both on stealth.
Plus 20. It's at this point, it's just don't roll in that one.
So peek behind the curtain, we've recorded the
that
rogue
one isn't that one
as well. I said in my little section, I add a little bit about Baldur's Gate. Like Astarion for me can't, with all his bonuses, can't roll lower than a 23 sleight of hand unless he rolls a nat 1, in which case disarming trap fails and it explodes.
Yeah.
So I was still making roll even with the plus 20 with passing out trace, and I'll make him roll. Because then that's
nat 1
hilarious.
is a nat 1.
Well, we only mentioned hide in plain sight, but as again, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything providing options and magic. There is also Nature's Veil.
Yeah.
Which is the other, so Nature's Veil is a lot more magic based than hide in plain sight. So it's not less about camouflaging. You use a bonus action and you can magically become invisible along with equipment that you have, that you're wearing and carrying until the start of your next turn. So it's quite short.
Yeah.
But it's essentially a sort of like, I'm in trouble now. Let me get out of here. But you can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, which at that point you're level 10, which is plus 4? Plus 4 level 10 proficiency bonus?
Something like that, yeah.
Get in the comments.
Engagement.
But it's true, like, the other one takes a minute to camouflage yourself, and this one is instantaneous. Shit, let me get the
bonus action. As a bonus action, it's not even an action to turn invisible. Now, it's until the start of your next turn, not the end of your next turn, the start of your next turn. So you better be using this at the very beginning of your turn. I think it's very situational, but I'd still pick that over hide in plain sight.
I would shoot someone with a bow and then use my bonus action to disappear and leg it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because then they're going to go where you used to be. You can sort of misdirect. And I think one thing that we haven't actually mentioned is that I think the Ranger is very much a controller type type class, which what I mean by controller is they've got a lot of pull and push in the placement of everyone on the battlefield, specifically themselves. But they're really good bait. They're really, really good bait, being like, here's me shooting at your bow. Hey, come over here. Leave my cleric alone type thing. Or you can be moving away very quickly, sort of like having people chase you, but you could probably survive that a lot better than a barbarian could, depending on. I think it's a great option to really control the battlefield and making sure that you've got a hand to play into where every enemy is to put that into at your advantage.
Yeah. So Nature's Veil. What's it? Nature's Veil?
Nature's Veil.
Nature's Veil. At level 14, you learn hide, like as a action.
Vanish.
Use the hide action as a bonus action as your turn at level 14. It's not.
Yes.
That is better vanish. That is just better vanish. Which
it is vanish. This.
No, it's
also it means
you just turn invisible and fuck off.
Yeah.
But you have to use your bonus action to hide and then possibly be seen if they roll a good enough perception. I'm like, it kind of vanish kind of gets nullified if you take Nature's Veil.
Yeah. I believe. I assume that's why they also add the favored enemy improvement at level 14, because they must have realized that having just a vanish at level 14 is actually too late. almost, because level 14 is quite high. I don't know how many campaigns you guys are playing, but I haven't got any characters at level 14 currently that I'm playing like at the moment.
No.
I've played a level 14 character before, but at the moment I'm playing like 3 or 4 different campaigns whether I'm DMing or I'm playing, and none of them are up to level 14. Usually my character will die before that, or we finish the campaign before that.
Yeah. There is no alternative.
Yeah, like who's gotten to level 20? Have you guys known a campaign that gets to level 20?
Am I level 20 yet in your campaign?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
That's a horrible way to ask for a level up.
Did we level up? Did we level up 16 levels?
Never ask your DM if you're leveling up. Never. Never, 'cause the answer will always be no.
Level down.
You trip and fall back to level 3.
I have never implemented that, and I'm extremely, extremely tempted to put something into like a level down or something. I think it'd be pretty great actually if someone wanted to sort of respec after a while, sort of like you could have something happen, maybe amnesia, something like that, have them level back down to a certain level. If they've realized, for example, they were playing Ranger, and they were like, I'm really enjoying the Hunter archetype, but actually I think I've realized that I'd really like to try Drake Warden.
You sink back down to the level where you can choose an ability score or a feat, and then you just rebuild up from there. Choose a different feat, make a completely different character with a new twist.
I think respec is doable. I think respec is doable. It just has to make sense narratively.
Multiverse, like alternate reality. Or you can still be a ranger, just pick a different pathway.
It's me from the future. Don't choose that one. You're destined to become me.
Marty, don't have sex with your mother.
Oh, no.
Your mother has the hots for you, Marty.
Moving on.
Listen, D&D is all about incest, as we know.
Yeah.
The BBEG does not support this notion.
Again, guidelines. I can't stress this enough. Guidelines, not rules.
Guidelines in the PHP. We're going to
moving on.
Indeed.
So then you've got the last two sort of features, which is feral senses and foe slayer. Feral senses, it's when you attack a creature you can't see, your inability to see it doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack rolls against it, which is pretty handy.
So my only note on this one was if you took the archer skill base back at like level 2, bend the fucking arrow like the Matrix.
Yeah. And then
I think that's very situational again. And I've got this issue with we'll talk about cons, I'm sure, in a second, but I've got this issue with a lot of things in the PHP, specifically with Ranger, but a couple other classes as well, Monk, for example. But I think there's going to be so many times where this isn't going to come into play at all.
Yeah.
How often as a dungeon master for either of you have you gone, and on this turn my enemy hides? How often have you gone, I'm going to make the enemy hide?
Yeah, I've made some creatures invisible, but it's like it'll get tiring very quickly for them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not something that I tend to throw. When I do throw it, if I keep it sort of like sparse and situational, I think it's a lot scarier for them. Yeah, you're fighting this master assassin. You saw him a second ago. He turned invisible. He could be behind you right now. He could be like, great. That's going to be terrifying if it's happened once.
Yeah.
If every other session you're throwing in enemies that are turning invisible at your PCs, it loses its thing.
Where do we draw the line here? If they're invisible, they're fucking invisible. But if you can't see them because they've taken cover behind a flipped table, you know where they are. Invisible is invisible. You can't see that, no matter how hard you try. If they're just hiding, you know where they are.
I guess it's still like a senses thing.
Other senses, like Daredevil type thing. There you go. Daredevil type thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the rogue gets some features that allow them to sense if something is invisible or hidden 10 feet around them.
Yep.
But
So,
again, I think that's great. That's wonderful to be able to see an invisible creature. A way to go around that and not have that would still be probably even better, actually, because this is only 30 feet of you. You could just cast Hunter's Mark on that person. And even if they turn invisible, you still know exactly where they are.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
As a DM, with that sense, I don't think I'd give disadvantage on the attack for that specific character. Every other character,
Because the mark,
Yeah.
you can still see that mark. The mark doesn't become invisible.
exactly. So
Okay.
they just know hit the mark.
Yeah.
Hit the mark and then you're good. So again,
You might not know the body part, but you're hitting it.
and actually, I think the higher levels we get into Ranger, the more not the more situational it gets, because it's always been situational, but I think the less impressive it gets.
Compared to other classes, especially when you look at the transition from older editions of D&D to the 5e edition of D&D, the Ranger really took a backseat for some reason, and that's not fair.
It feels like, again, I'm using this series to learn different classes, and it seems like the Ranger other classes become more superhuman as they level up. The Ranger gets more.
Ranger.
You can do more things with your arrows.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've mostly talked about the ones that we've played. I think yours was more spellcaster based. Mine was more fighting based. I think there is also something to be said about the fact that you could be a Ranger Beastmaster, which then you'd have you'd have a familiar. Is that what you call it?
Well, you'd get an animal friend. Yeah. Should we dive into the subclasses?
Yeah, into the archetypes. Yes.
Yeah, we should. Have we talked about level 20 before we?
Oh yeah, Foe Slayer. Basically, you just get to add your Wisdom modifier to your attack roll.
That's it. That's what I'm on about. It does become superhuman. Add your Wisdom modifier.
All the damage roll.
A little bit
all
more
the damage roll.
Yeah.
Or the damage roll, yeah, but at that point, when I'm thinking about it with a bow, because that's just what I played, but at level 9, I think I already have a +10 to hit with a longbow at this point. At level 8, sorry. Level 8, I still... So when I reach level 20, realistically, what am I going to be? +16, +18 already?
You just don't need it at that point.
I probably have a magical bow that magically hits anyway and fires magic missile. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
so put it on the damage.
But again, unless you're playing a spell casting Ranger, would you put your points into Wisdom?
I didn't, because I still don't think you have a crazy amount of spell slots.
There is that.
At that point, you could still only be +3 in Wisdom. It's like,
also,
nice.
That feature only works for your favored enemy, so it's a bit restrictive. I didn't even see that actually.
Oh my god, that is so situational.
So it's not even against all enemies. It's just one type, which
it's just again.
And I'm going to go on a very quick tangent here, but level 20 features of classes are so disproportionate. I'm sorry, but specifically, and the two classes that I love, that are very, very dear to my heart, and that I can't really bring myself to play on a longer campaign because I know that I'm gonna get bamboozled. I'm gonna get got. It's not gonna work by the time I reach like 20th level, because it's not worth it. Is Ranger and Monk, because you hit level 20 and you get something not necessarily great. Like Monk gets to get 4 key points back when they go into combat. 4 key points for a monk is going to go in 2 turns.
Oh, literally, I'm playing a monk at the minute, and about halfway through combat, I'm like, I'm just punching things.
Exactly.
Let's jump over to the Ranger archetypes. In the PHP, there are 2, and honestly, I think I'm not sure if I'm the first person to write this down, but I have questions about if things stack.
If things can stack, incredible. So let me know which ones are in the PHP, because I've got the full list. So it'd be useful for me to have everything.
So PHP is Beastmaster and Hunter.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Then Tasha's Cauldron is Fey Wanderer and Swarmkeeper. Xanath's Guide is Gloomstalker, Horizon Walker, and Monster Slayer. And then Fizban's Treasury of Dragons is Drake Warden.
I've not even heard of that third book, not gonna lie, boys.
It's on that shelf.
Go
downstairs.
Yeah, Hunter. So Hunter at level 3, you can either choose Colossus Slayer. Your tenacity can wear down the most potent foes. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, the creature takes an extra 1d8 damage if it's already been hurt. Again, if you're not first in the initiative order, this can rack up. Again, pair favorite foe and stuff like that.
Yes, but also you've got to remember, even if you're first in the initiative order, you get an extra attack. Just put it on your second attack instead of the first attack.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Leveling up with the hunter, you do get the chance to counter strikes, hit or misses. So if someone goes for you, you can counter that. You get attempt to hit a second opponent. Also some features that grant multi-attacks and defense boosts. Basically, I think this is the Ranger subclass. This is if you just want to make your Ranger so like traditional, an exceptional hunter that's basically almost never going to miss or be able to strike back whenever you go against it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is also these archetypes. A hunter lets you either get close combat or ranged. So the level 3 seems very, very close combat. Like you say, giant killer, if the creature misses you, you can just get a free opportunity attack on them. Horde breaker, you can run in and attack a monster. And then if there's another monster within 5 feet, you can attack that one as well.
Yeah.
But then at level 7, that's, again, you can get out of there. Level 7, defensive tactics, escape the horde. Opportunity attacks against you are made with disadvantage. You run in 5 feet, get out of there. And they don't get, or they get disadvantage and opportunity.
Very useful, because although they're not like squishy per se, it is still only a D10 hit die for the Ranger. I know we haven't talked about that, but it's only a D10 per level, which is still better, but it's not the tankiest that you could have.
Yeah. No barbarian.
Yeah.
Then level 7 again, multi-attack defense. When a creature hits you with an attack, you get +4 bonus to AC against any subsequent attack. So if they have 2 or 3 attacks, really, really helps.
That's incredible. It really come in handy so many times, specifically for enemies that are, because the longer you play, the more you're going to get enemies that get like 2, 3, 4 attacks in a row.
Yeah.
And if you're the only person there, you're taking some attacks. You know, so you might as well hit the first, like get hit by the first one, and then hopefully it doesn't get past your AC for the next 4. You know, you can't have shield, unfortunately, which would be a nice stack for it. But
9.
like, you know, that's how you bump yourself up straight away to like 24 AC or something ridiculous. So.
Yeah.
And then the third one for defensive tactics is, again, very situational. Steel will. You have advantage on saving throws about being frightened. Situational to the enemy. So wait, is it one of them? It's only one of them. I wouldn't choose Steel Will.
I wouldn't. I don't think it's the most common that people pick anyway. I think multi-attack defense is sort of clearly the best out of
Yeah, for sure.
those.
For sure. Oh, yeah, the volley you mentioned earlier. You can use your action to make a ranged attack against any number of creature within 10 feet of a point you can see. You got to have ammunition for each target. It's the only thing, though. And in my notes, I wrote, who keeps track of ammunition? Yeah.
That's quite nice. I guess you get a little bit of that with the multi-attack anyway.
You do.
You could hit 2 different enemies. But I would say, for me, the Ranger has always been more of a single target, which is sort of what Favored Enemy, Hunter's Mark, and all of that directs you towards. It's like, hit this person and hurt them bad. And then a little bit of a crossover when you get to level 15, you get Superior Hunter's Defense, which is the same as a rogue. You essentially, you get evasion, so you can take half damage for area effect spells and melee attacks, a little rogue crossover. But then there's a Stand Against the Tide. When a hostile creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to force that creature to repeat the same attack against you on another creature, not themselves. Can you partner that with Escape the Horde? Opportunity attacks against you are made with disadvantage. So if 3 people try opportunity attacks and they all miss, can you bounce 3 different attacks around? If you've picked both, I'd say yeah.
Because I'm like, that.
It doesn't seem like there's anything in it that's like standing against that. And
the wording.
And if the wording says it, I think I'd say it does, because otherwise I think it's too restrictive.
Yeah.
I think that's just so funny. If you get 3 enemies around you and they all miss, you go, so I just bonk each other. Actually, that sounds dirty.
It's going to be quite situational, but if you can make that happen, I think that's a beautiful storytelling moment as well.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
So funny just to play around the table.
Like literally everyone hits you, you just duck down, and everyone just slaps each other in the head. That's brilliant. That's peak D&D. We love it.
And then the last one for Superior Hunter is Uncanny Dodge. Again, it's the rogue thing, half damage on melee attacks.
Yeah.
Please can you explain, because I think you'll understand this and you'll understand this more than I will, Killian. Beastmaster. There's a lot of information and there's going to be so many stats to memorize. How would you deal with having an animal familiar? What's the best way? Walk me through Beastmaster.
I mean, essentially, it's a class that if you just want a pet,
No, literally.
you get to use that pet for, combat and stuff like that. There's stat blocks that you can pick from. There's a bunch of stat blocks in the back of the PHB, but you can also have a look online. You can talk to your DM about what sort of animal you might encounter to train as a pet. It's kind of how it works. You just allow your animal to attack. They'll have their own separate turn in combat. Obviously, depending on the animal that you do have, they might also have some features like keen senses and stuff like that. So that might be great for trying to sniff something out, or, it's a bit situational. But yeah.
Do you only get one, or can you choose after a long rest, I want another familiar? Or do you just choose one?
So my understanding is you pick one. However, it's not a long rest situation because you then have to come into contact with another animal to create that bond. So you could have more than one because maybe your first one died in battle.
Pull one out.
And so you've lost it. You can't, obviously, unless, Revivify, if you've got a cleric willing to do that. But
save my dog.
No, exactly.
I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful subclass, and I think it's definitely something Rangers should have. I think the issue I've got with it is specifically at low level, it doesn't give you much.
No, you just get a pet, basically.
Yeah.
And then it gets better and better, and then by the end, you get a little bit more spells, a little bit more things. It's more useful.
Something we spoke about briefly, I mentioned, was level 15. Again, it's getting late on to the campaign at this point, but you share spells, so any buffs you have your familiar gets. So that's
quite cool.
That's
quite cool, specifically because by that point your pet has got a lot more use to it because of Bestial Fury. And because of all of your things sort of buff your pets essentially as you level up, your pet gets more attacks, more things that they can do. I think it's a really cool concept.
Yeah,
this subclass.
But
I think it's a roleplay dynamic.
Yeah. Agreed. But I think you can also have a familiar without being a Beastmaster and have something a lot more
restrictions
powerful than that. Yeah, I think there's a way to just have a ranger. If you were a hunter ranger, I think it'd still absolutely fine for you to have a hunting dog, for example, something like that.
Yeah. Yep. I get that.
So out of the two, I think hunter offers you a lot more diversity. The Beastmaster has another body in combat, and you get a pet. That's it.
Yeah, but do you know what? For some people, that might be everything. Like that relationship with your pet, that might be an incredible bit of RP, a big part of the story, something that's part of their backstory that's they've brought into the campaign, which is lovely. I think if that's what you've got your heart set on, and you still might have a lot of fun with it.
So those are the official guide the official original players handbook ones. PHB, can you rattle through the expansions?
Before we do that, I'm going to be absolute pain. I need to run to the toilet very quickly.
I mean, we have been recording for an hour and 18 minutes, so I should be able to cut this down to an hour and 15.
That's fine.
I can knock 3 minutes off somewhere.
Sure. Somewhere we'll find a place.
So if we look at Tasha's Cauldron, the two that you get with that is Fey Wanderer and Swarm Keeper. Now, I played a Fey Wanderer and had a great time with it. Basically, the summary of it is you're intertwined with some Fey magic, which allows you to gain some extra damage abilities. Basically, it has its own version of a Hunter's Mark. Again, you don't need the spell. And the feature Favored Foe, where you get the 1d4, it sort of sits in the middle. I think it's a 1d6. But yeah, you basically get that as almost like a psychic sort of mark on them. And you get the
same
same
thing. You don't have to expend a spell slot at all. It's just
it's a feature.
I think
literally it is limited to, the typical feature slots that you get, but obviously that increases the more you level up. And I want to say at some point it might even increase in damage as well. You then get access to some additional spells that Rangers might not typically get. So like I got Misty Step, which is always fun to have. I want to say Rangers don't typically get that, but I could be wrong.
You get a bit placement, you get a bit which is
bonus action to get out of that.
Beautiful.
You can later on then summon Fae to like help you basically in combat, but also not only teleport yourself, but an ally as well.
Like I said, placement, controller.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Then you've got Swarm Keeper, which is basically you get to summon a swarm of nature spirits that assist you again in combat, however you want to use it. They can take their own turn in combat. You can use them to move yourself, so you're not using your own walking speed, or an opponent. And later on, they can even be used to assist you with flying, because that's all we really want to do in life.
Yeah.
And then I would say the good bonuses with Swarm Keeper is later on, because of the swarm, basically you can disappear into the swarm itself and gain resistances to damages that have literally just attacked you. So if a sword came at you there and then, you would take that damage in that moment, but then later on for the rest of that combat, you now have resistance to slashing or whatever type of damage it was. And again, there is room for teleportation through your nature spirits as well. This kind of covers the main two of those two, isn't it?
I love the teleportation for me.
I had a lot of fun with Fey Wanderer. Like, just using that teleportation to my advantage was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, because placement, not only is it something you're good at as a ranger, but I think it's so important. Like we saw, like for example, if you need to place yourself to use like your multi-attack defense and stuff like that, that's...
But be able to step out quickly.
100%. 100%, because you can't have any heavy armor, so your AC is not going to be that high. You could be using a shield and stuff and buff yourself up a little bit, but you're not going to be the highest ACs in the game.
No, absolutely not. Then you've got, from Xanathar's Guide, is Gloomstalker, Horizon Walker, and Monster Slayer. Gloomstalker, basically it's adept to the Underdark is the best way of saying it, but not just the Underdark, also like darkness as a general. So it could be nighttime, it could be a dark alleyway. So their sort of subclass is all geared around that. Again, they gain some extra spells with also learning the art of ambushing, which could be really helpful. Again, a bit scenario dependent, but I guess it's almost putting that assassin twist on a ranger.
I think that's very on brand for the ranger as well.
Yeah. You gain extended dark vision, which some people will enjoy. Some people will be like, I don't care. You get bonuses to your wisdom saving throws and the ability to turn misses into hits.
So that's like a
reroll situation. Yeah.
Again, more crossover between ranger and rogue. This is very interesting to see what they went. Actually, the character we built in the PHB, actually that's going to suit this one. So put it in the expansion. It will suit them as well.
Then Horizon Walker, and Killian, feel free to shut me up and jump in whenever you want.
No, please keep going. We're in a part of the ranger that I'm not actually the most.
Okay.
So I'm learning. Okay. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah. To be fair, I've only summarized them to. If we decided to go through every single feature, we'd be here for another hour. I've just made it compact to literally just be like the best way to sound it. So Horizon Walker is made to be like a guard almost, suitable against otherworldly threats. So I guess if you're having we did a campaign where our world was having rifts and it was like a tabaxi race or a race based off tabaxi that were basically trying to enter our world. So it would be great for that sort of thing where you, again, some additional spell lists, you gain force damage into your attacks. So basically, if I remember, it allowed once you hit, you could expend a bit of force damage to add on to your attack. You gain access to the ethereal realm, So basically, you can teleport between realms, not just teleport from like 30 feet to the next 30 feet. You can teleport within realms. Again, I guess that's a bit more like situational and role play, but there's some things to it that I believe allow you to basically move in that realm and then just appear but elsewhere in the new one. I guess almost like a mirror world, if you think of it.
It's very much teleportation-like, but not necessarily. You're just changing plane, moving yourself, and then reappearing in a plane. So I guess it's slightly different from teleportation.
So, but again, what happens if you go, oh yeah, I'm going to teleport to the infernal, and the DM goes, what are you on about? That's not part of this campaign. What are you doing?
Yeah. It's something you've got to discuss in.
Yeah. But it is specific to the ethereal realm, so there's only like one realm that you can do it to, which kind of makes sense with a later feature, which basically allows you to teleport to strike multiple enemies. So basically just popping up, strike. So I guess the ethereal realm is that sort of like, why I call it like a mirror world. Like you can pop in, run to the next bit, appear, and back again. And also, again, use reactions to gain resistances.
And I don't think you take attacks of opportunities when switching to a different round, which is really, really useful, again, for popping out of combat in and out. That's lovely.
Basically, I'm going to take the rogue's hide, but I'm going to take it a step further and jump into a different plane of existence.
That's exactly it.
I mean...
Then you've got... then you've got Monster Slayer. Basically, if you are looking to make a ranger based on a Buffy the Vampire Slayer sort of character, this is your class. Because it gears towards the abilities.
I saw that on your notes and I absolutely love the wording.
Yeah. So it gears its abilities towards hunting like vampires, dragons, or like evil fae, that sort of thing. So think anything that goes bump in the night, you are there. You gain stronger senses, allowing you to detect immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities in those creatures. So when you're high enough, a dragon of a certain type, let's just say it's a fire dragon, you might learn it's weak against water, that sort of thing. And think Pokemon.
If you haven't played Pokemon before, this is how it works.
That's your homework.
All of them.
Or even just learning things it's immune to, which can be really handy, which means if you've got a spellcaster who can deal some bomb-ass damage, you can relay that information and they don't have to waste Fireball against a fire dragon, because obviously dragons come in different colors. So unless you've met them, you don't always know. Two handy things that are good about this subclass is the ability to break a spell, essentially stopping someone from spellcasting.
Which ability is that?
Let me pull it up.
Your wording.
It's Slayer's counter, isn't it?
Yes, Slayer's counter.
That, like, the way you worded that, to stop spellcasting, is that just a counter spell, or do you entirely stop spellcasting?
Actually, it's better,
as in
better than counter spell.
But like that spell in the moment, you've blocked it.
That's actually quite funny. That means a dickhead to another player or enemy.
Yeah.
Stop having fun.
Also then, you do also have the ability to counter attack when a prey comes for you. And then finally, you have Drake Warden. Now, I actually love this. It's basically Beastmaster, but with a dragon. And I know Beastmaster isn't really. It's not really the
not
best.
Just like Beastmaster, because the hit points and I believe other things in the dragon scale as you level up as well. So not only you level up, but your dragon levels up and grows. And it ends up being to the point where you can mount it and have a dragon mount.
Why does not everyone just choose this?
No, it's the coolest thing ever, and I wish I'd played this. Like, if I was going to play a ranger again, it would have to be that.
Yeah.
But I think this is only really worth it for a long-term campaign.
Yeah.
Where you're going to, like, have to get attached to that mount and that dragon and see it grow. And I think there's like a big sort of reward coming from the DM as to being like, you've hatched this little egg. Here's your little hamster that does like 1d4 damage, and then at the end you've got a huge dragon that you can mount, and you get a flying speed.
Again, go play Pokemon.
Go play Pokemon.
Yeah. You can have your own Charizard.
That's it.
If you take anything from this, screw D&D, go play
listen to
Pokemon.
you.
Next episode's a Pokemon podcast. You mentioned we've never actually done a level 20 campaign, but if we do a level 20 one shot, I think I know what class I'm choosing.
I mean,
I know what monsters I'll be putting in your way. No, that's pretty much it. You get some extra damages and resistances as it grows, but that's kind of it. In the sense of it's not too exciting of what you get, but you get a dragon.
I think that's a good payoff.
And it grows stronger with you, so...
Growing stronger with you is incredible, and having it is a while until you get to the point where you can mount the dragon. I think it's level
7.
Oh no, 7.
Is that it?
I had in my head that it was 15, but no, actually, it just gets even bigger at level 15. You get a choice between 3 different things, and you can have it like actually bigger. So it goes from the size of a horse to the size of a pretty much an actual dragon. If I'm
what the hell? All right.
Now, I've got to say this. I'm quite a mean DM. If you've got something that you care about that's pissing me off, I'm gonna hurt it.
Next session, I'm going to plan something that
you're gonna come across someone else who's mounting a dragon, and they are gonna fuck up your dragon. And if it dies, you're gonna cry, and you'll be like, "Why you do this?" Well,
I think there are ways to balance it out. Like a level 1 player doesn't need 50 feet of flying speed, but.
No,
I'm not saying they can't have any at all, because then what you've just taken may be something that they really wanted to do with that race.
Yeah. And the point of D&D is yes and. You can't say no.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. Stop having fun.
I think I'd have to really trust my player for them to pick that specific,
and not just for power
them
mad.
Not to abuse it, you know.
Yeah,
I'm very much of the school where, like, if I'm playing a character, I haven't found that with Ranger, apart from like huge amount of damage, but damage is nothing. HP is a construct that you can choose as a DM. You can choose how many hit points they have. If you want it to have 100 more hit points than it has on the PHP or on the DM's guide, just do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
If that's how your PCs are and they do a lot of damage, do that.
Gentlemen, is that the Ranger?
I believe
pretty much
the Ranger. Yeah.
Well,
we could. There's so much more we could talk about, but quite frankly, we've only got 2 hours free recording time.
And we're getting close.
We've been recording for an hour and 36 minutes. So behind the curtain.
Let's quickly talk pros and cons to this class.
Yes.
Do we want to go like 1 pro each?
Yeah.
So start.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's see if we can all come up with 1 pro and 1 con.
May I go first, because I know less about the Ranger than me doing
Please
my little research.
Go for it.
So, reading through Ranger, my pro was I like stealth builds, and there seems to be you can really, if you want to invest in stealth, that's still an option for Ranger. And then I love a rogue. You can still do roguey bits and chip damage, and like I say, boost it with random thing. So I think Ranger is probably going to be really close to rogue for me. Whenever we rank it, I think so.
Yeah,
it's actually not too far in my ranking. I've just made. Which, by the way, I've just made a ranking. If you saw me scribbling on my notepad, that's what I was doing. I was doing a ranking because I didn't know we were doing that.
What's your pro for the Ranger?
I think for me, it's how versatile it is. I love the fact that yes, you're going to be good at stealth, but also I'm able to output an incredible amount of damage without having sneak attack. I think that's beautiful. And I think the fact that you don't have to pick that you could just not have any archery in there, have weapons instead. Yep. And if you're not into that, you can go into spellcasting, even though it's a bit less powerful. Incredible. And also, I kind of like, this is kind of just a little bonus for me, but I'll put it as a pro. It's one of the lesser fantasy classes for me, apart from sort of like the Drake Warden type stuff. For me, the Beastmaster, for example, is very much like a guy that's lived in the woods forever and just have honed his skills. And the Hunter's Mark can be less of a spell and more of just an ability to just know where shit is.
It's very straightforward. It's very, if you want for want of a better phrase, simple class to play. You can build this simple for a new player.
Yeah.
Like, this could be an entry class.
And I think I'd still I'd still accept that in a less magic based campaign, because the spellcasting is limited enough that they're not going to go out cast fireball and kill everyone.
Yep.
It's still okay. Well, I have to line up my shot with my bow, or I have to like make sure I place myself right to do some fighting. And also, here's fog cloud, which is actually a smoke bomb I had in my pocket. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I like to twist spells like that to make them fit less magic sort of story. And
what's your pro for the Ranger?
So my pro is kind of adding on to Killian's with the versatility, but not from like combat point of view. It's the fact that it can kind of fit the different gaps that other classes do have. So if it's not in your party, I'm not saying you're going to be the best at it, but you can help bridge that gap as best as possible, especially when it comes to the roleplay aspects of some of the things. You know, having a touch of druid, rogue, fighter, it just allows you the opportunity to. Yeah. So if for whatever reason your party has separated, or even you don't have a solid healer or a solid rogue, the Ranger can help bridge those gaps. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect for it, but you're not stranded.
Yeah.
If you were going to play D&D solo, I think it's one of the more viable classes.
Yeah.
Because you technically don't need anyone else.
Yeah, that I agree with.
You could just run a lot with you yourself, which is great, which is not really what you could say of a wizard. It's extremely difficult to run a wizard by itself. I think it's probably, you could do it with a fighter, but then once you come across a spellcaster, your life's going to get hard. It's going to get very difficult.
But on the back of that, so you just said how versatile it is for like if you're doing a solo, play, you can do that. My con is for a long-term campaign. Pretty much every other point we've said in this, every other level is that's situational.
Yeah.
So if the DM has their thinking of this is how I want it to go, it might not cater to your Ranger. So maybe a few of your abilities are going to go unused. I think some of the abilities are so situational, they might not even come up.
Yeah.
And they won't. And they won't. If I have to say that, there's been things on my. Told you I've played that campaign for 5 years, and there are abilities that I've still not used on that character sheet. I think it's a gamble you've got to take with the Ranger at this point, specifically with Hunter and stuff like that, which is I think the most situational out of all of them.
Yeah,
I think you got to be very aware with this class of what type of campaign you're playing. I think it's really worth a discussion with the DM being like, hey, is this like highly magical? Are we in the world of Faerun? Is it really going to be useful for me to have a pet? Is it really doable for me to have Drake Warden and have a pet dragon? Like, does that work?
Always.
Yes, a pet dragon always works. That's never a no. Yeah, I think you've just really got to have that conversation.
Is that looking like your con of the class as well, Em? That is kind of situational and...
Do you know what? My con was also a play on the versatility of it. Was like on the flip side of it being so versatile that it doesn't quite master a specific thing.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah. Like I said, it does bridge that gap.
Good at anything.
Yeah, it does bridge that gap in a lot of senses, but also a fallback is it doesn't excel in any one area. I'd say, if anything, it gets the biggest push in the rogue aspect of things, but it's still not, it doesn't get what a rogue gets. Do you get what I mean? So I feel like there's not quite that unique identifier with the Ranger.
For me, the con would be an RP thing. It would be a roleplay thing.
Who are they?
Yeah. I think it's an extremely restrictive sort of backstory. And you were talking about this sort of thing where you were like, they essentially give you a backstory. Now, you can divert from that. But the Ranger at its core is a very specific kind of person. And a lot of Rangers that I've encountered, whether it's the ones I've played or the ones that I've seen my players play, have been somewhat similar.
Yeah.
In the way. Dark backstory,
Yeah.
mother or father killed by some wizard or monster or something.
May I offer as like a little, because we said in the last episode as Rogue, you don't have to adhere to the stereotypes. Literally the first thing I wrote down when I read creating the character, tragic backstory, you're hunting, you're getting revenge, May I sign us off with my basic backstory idea for a ranger?
Hell yeah.
Before we do rankings.
Hell yeah.
So
Yeah,
obviously
go for it.
in the PHB, it's like a monster burned down your village and killed your parents, and now you're hunting them.
Which is a good backstory.
Yeah, I mean,
Nothing wrong
that's
with it.
standard adventure backstory. I thought, what
UK history.
a full elf mother and a human father had a child, a half elf. The elf mother goes missing suddenly, and you grow up without a mother. And they train to be a ranger. You can use your specialized foe, your tracking abilities for that foe, to go and find a Fey ancestry, and your thing is to find your mother, and that's what you use it as.
And so your
more than
favorite foe, your favorite enemy would be actually an ally? Is that what you're saying?
It's kind of thing.
To
But
help track them?
if you're heading out and it's going to be a Fey-based campaign, and your mother is a Fey, you're going to have advantage on the Fey enemies, but also be able to track your mother.
I really like that. I've not.
Yeah,
thought about it.
that's a good twist on it. Yeah.
That's a lovely, lovely twist on it. I like that. That's brilliant. And I
You're
think
never going to
it
find your
also
mother
needs to
there.
come from a more, yeah,
She's already dead. That's the twist.
bad DM, bad. Don't let the intrusive thoughts win. Not everyone has to die. Some people have to die
To make a statement.
to make a statement and remind everyone who the boss is.
Oh, they're lucky. I've not killed a single one of them in my campaign yet.
Yet. There we go. I knew you were going to say
Now he's not being mean enough.
They're only level 4. I got to give them a chance.
Oh yeah, no,
It's just
fine.
beginning. It's just beginning.
Don't kill your pieces at level 4, please.
So, to sign off, where are we ranking our Rangers, gentlemen? Killian, as guest, you go first.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm still missing a class, but I assume it must be my least favorite one. So I just left the bottom slot empty. If I can't think of it, it's probably the worst. I have put the Ranger in 7th position, which is pretty much
That is
it's the lower half.
That's what I was thinking as well, 7th or 8th, because it's good at everything, but not great at everything. It's very situational. It's like the rogue, but
Yep.
like the fighter. It doesn't know what it is. So I'm going to put it
Mhm.
in 8th.
Yeah.
I've written it down in pen. It's there now. Ranger 8th.
I think I put it just below Druid for me. And
Fair.
for me, that's because I love Druid and it's lovely. It's just not my favorite type of thing to play. I do acknowledge that it's extremely powerful. For me, Ranger, I put it below Druid, but above Fighter.
Yeah.
Because I really, really like having just a little bit
Yeah.
of spell casting in there
Yep.
and the versatility of it. And I love playing
Yeah.
archers.
Literally, it landed in 7th place for me as well. Like, these rankings are personal, so it's about preference and what you enjoy playing. I like my magic, but still, compared to some of the other classes that I have played, I just feel like I got more out of them. So that's why it fell there.
Yep. And we're not there. We don't know what episode we're going to record next, but I have just had a peek at Killian's rankings, and his number 12 is what I'm going to put at number 12.
It's amazing how long we can ramble on about fictional games and characters and
Genuinely,
incredible things.
we're now we're at 1 minute 49. 1 hour 49. We could easily have gone on for like 2.5
Yeah.
hours about this.
Easy.
Yeah.
If we had not picked up the pace after level 1, this would be a disaster.
Yeah.
But thank God
Well-
we had you keeping us on track.
Yeah. Well, Will, do you want to sign us out?
Hello, my name's Will. That is M over in Europe. This is Killian, the guest for the episode. If you would like to find us on social media, you can find us at the BBEG Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Those are our
TikTok.
socials. TikTok, that's the one
That's the main one.
I always forget about. That's that one. And then if you'd like to email in, we are the BBEG Podcast at gmail.com. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google Podcasts is apparently a thing. Find us on all of them, wherever you get your podcasts. Killian, thank you very
And
much
YouTube.
for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, shit, yeah. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's also on YouTube. This is why Hatty does this bit. Hatty does this bit.
I know.
I'll come back and we'll do one with Hatty next time.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Thank you very much, boys. We'll see you in the next
Yeah.
episode.
Bye.
Yeah.